in reality was that there was only one thought in my head, and that was that I will never be able to speak Finnish. Never. Like, I cannot do this. This is not going to happen. I think that to get comfortable, I had to first get very uncomfortable and understand that I don't want that feeling. So I was motivated by discomfort of that, of these initial interactions. So if you're trying to be perfect, that will eat away at the freedom that you have when you're being imperfect. This is why I allow myself to sometimes just carry through the conversation even though I've not understood something or something.
All right, welcome to this episode of How I Learned Finnish with Ohe. Today we have a very special guest that I ran into and almost eluded me, but I managed to convince her to do this episode. And we're gonna do a quick fire, just a few questions at the beginning. And so, name.
Kseniia,
Age.
27,
Profession.
musician/singer.
And do you have a nickname?
No, just my name.
Just your name?
Kseniia.
Okay, lovely. So how I found Kseniia, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah, Kseniia.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So how I found Kseniia, I asked my friend who was organizing this program called Splash Forum for student entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship societies of universities and stuff. And I asked if I could be the stage host. And boom, just like that, I was a stage host for an event. First time I was doing that. And I was talking to Peter Westerbacka. I was trying to talk to Peter Westerbacka because I needed to film a video with him because the other stage host told me how he operates and I need to. And then I was trying to go talk to him, but I'm like, damn, there's somebody else already talking to him. But I had to insert myself into the conversation somehow. Yeah. So I just came there and I started talking to both of you as best as I know how without coming off as rude.
I didn't notice that. I did not see that.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That means I pulled it off. Yeah, I was just trying to converse without making you feel out, without also making him feel any kind of like rudeness or anything. And then I mentioned the thing that I'm working on this kind of project. And then you said that you've learned Finnish. You've learned Finnish. And I was like, wait, when did you come to Finland? And you were like 18. I was like, jackpot. Because that means like you came here as an adult and you learned it as an adult. And which makes you like perfect candidate to be interviewed for this. And that's how I found you. And yeah, almost lost you at some point because I had to go make a video with him. But but just briefly, how does Finland show up in your life story? What brought you here and how long have you been in Finland?
So I've been here since 2016. I came here when I turned 18, fresh out of high school. So it's been 9 years. It's going to be 10 years next August. Originally, the idea of coming to Finland to study came from my desk mate. I had a desk mate, Olga. Shout out to Olga if you're watching. Back in high school in St. Petersburg, where I grew up. Her older sister, studied the same thing, business in Mikkeli. So I don't remember the name because they changed the name of the university, but it was Mikkeli. And then Olga decided that she wanted the same thing. So she talked to me about that a little bit, and I was like in denial at first because I did not understand the value of that in my life. Generally speaking, I did not understand what I wanted to do at all. I was just burnt out like many people are in high school. And then I went to a study fair with loads of different universities, both local and foreign. And then a spokesperson of a language school came to my mother to talk about different opportunities because I think he kind of noticed that she was maybe a good candidate for that kind of educational relationship. This is like really weird, but he literally, the CEO of that language school saw my mother and he was like, do you want your daughter to study abroad? And she was like, let's talk. And so they talked, and then I started in an English class with them to pass IELTS. And then after IELTS, I went to another class at the same language school, preparing for the entrance exams to Finland. So by the time 2016 rolled in, I was already with my English certificate, getting ready for all the things. And then in 2016, I got accepted after the entrance exams, and I ended up in Jyväskylä. And I went to YAMK for 4 years after that.
Right. Uvascular. Just out of there. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but that was a conscious decision. That wasn't random
Okay.
because I wanted to go to a university which would have the EPAS accreditation so that I would, if I were to get good marks, this would make it easier for me to study masters at, I'd say, any kind of other top European university. And back then I assumed that I would be studying my masters in England because I wanted to live there. So, JAMK was one of the only universities, if not the only one, who had that kind of a batch of approval. So I wanted to be there. Plus, it was really far away from Russia, so it's right in the middle of Finland, literally Keski-Suomi. So that was my idea behind it, is that I would be far away for it to be a proper Finnish experience.
Right.
And I would also be getting quality education that would then set me up for success in the future after these 4 years have run out, regardless of where I choose to go.
What certification can you?
So I started studying international business. It was a BBA
Yeah.
program. And yeah, my goal with it, I guess, back in the day was just to get some general scope of what it is, the world of international business management, kind of cross-cultural communication, because I didn't really have any concrete idea of what I wanted to be afterwards. I mean, I knew where I wanted to be because originally I dreamt of living in England, and I thought that somewhere during my third, fourth year, when you go on exchange and you get your practical training done, I would end up there, find a job in England and just stay there for the rest of however long. And that spoiled, that didn't work that way. Although I did live in England for half a year as part of my study exchange, I came back afterwards. So in 2019, I came back. So I did a little bit of a break in these 9 years. It's fair to say that I haven't been here full 9 years because half a year I did in France. I lived in Cannes, where I did my practical training. And then half a year I lived in England, near London. So in 2019, I came back in October and I stayed for the better.
You said something about local, foreign universities and local universities, but local where? Where are you living before Finland?
Before I came to Finland, I lived in St. Petersburg. So this is where I went to school, went to high school. This is where I graduated from and then went straight off to Finland. So because by the time I was finishing high school, when I was 17, I'd already decided a couple of years before that I would be going to Finland. So this preparation process took me 2 years since I turned 16. So since 2014, which is where I passed, is it 2014? I think it is, which is where I passed my IELTS, then preparation course 1 year, and then going to Finland. So by 2016, I was already completely on the track of going abroad, and I might as well just say that I did not have a plan B. So I decided wholeheartedly that I will be doing this, and I did not waste much of my energy on any other things like entrance exams to Russian universities. I did not. It was a very risky move, which would become my signature move later on. I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but I kind of chose that life where I would just be like, I've decided and I think I'm just going to do it. And thankfully I managed to pull it. And I'm still here, quite lucky, but maybe also hardworking. So that's a combination of two.
Certainly.
Yeah, so I've decided to just go to Finland at some point with the information that I had about me, about my future and about my kind of ambition, and I just did it.
Right. So in your case, when you arrived in Finland, you did speak English.
Yes, I had a 6.5 band. IELTS would be B2, probably B2, maybe. I thought that I had it better, but IELTS said 6.5. So I just assumed that this was as bad as it could get, which is a B2. But I was already fluent by the time that I arrived to Finland. Even though, like, accent pronunciation-wise, it wasn't as consistent as it is today because obviously, I was younger. And I did speak fluent English. I spoke almost no Finnish. I did go to a very short preparatory course in Finnish in summer of 2016. So that is 1 month after I turned 18. And before going to Finland, I went in the same language school. I attended a Finnish language course, which I kind of just... I was really reluctant to any study at that point. I did not want to do any further reading, any further learning, any further kind of homework. I was more concerned with my personal life at that point than with any kind of education. So I just kind of sat there, tried to make sense of it. And then when I actually arrived to Jyväskylä, this was a whole different setting, a whole different story. And I obviously did not learn Finnish well enough to sustain a conversation or understand people or anything like that. So I spoke English for many years ahead, I want to say, until 2019, where I actually decided to pick it up again. Because in 2016, where I would start my studies, at some point, since I found it rather boring to study the same basic things, I asked the teacher if I could just skip it for a while and then come back for the exam. I passed the exam, and this is how I passed level 1. And then for the level 2, I think I kind of strung along with some of my friends who were better, when it comes to language learning, or just Finnish in general, better interested, I guess. And I would copy some homework. I would, try to pass by through the exams. And I think I got like a 3 or something. So it was really miserable in terms of like actual learning, because I never really thought that I would need it. I never really had that goal in mind. Becoming a Finnish speaker was not on the radar in 2016 or even 2017. This wasn't something relevant, because I assumed that I would be, that my destiny would lie in the UK, and I would be preparing for that for the next, since 2016, so 3 years, because in 2019 I actually got to be there on exchange. Yeah.
Right. Wow.
So at the beginning, the situation is dire. Finnish is rather absent. Even though I'd started learning it, I kind of put it on the back burner because it wasn't my highest priority.
A lot of people have the thing with if they know English to begin with, and then they don't also have a goal of like, I'm going to be in Finland for a long time, then it becomes very difficult. Because like in my parents' situation, they were like, oh, we're only going to be here for a while. A while turned into 20 years.
And that makes sense.
Right.
And that makes
but then
sense.
for people who have like a thing where they're like, I'm here for the long haul, they usually, so it's quite fascinating that you started with like, I'm not here for long. And then at some point you just switched it to, okay, I'm going to do this and make it happen.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
So 2016 you arrive, 2019 is when you decide to actually start learning it. And especially with having come in not with the idea like I'm going to be here for a long time. What prompted you to learn the Finnish language? Was there like a turning point or a specific need that pushed you?
So what pushed me to actually restart learning Finnish, to pick it up again, was the fact that after fulfilling my childhood dream, which was living in the UK and coming back to Finland, I went to a little bit of a crisis, trying to reestablish my values, trying to reestablish my goals for the future. And I've landed on something that I would call a search for home, kind of like an identity search question. And I realized that I'd like to try and make Finland my home. I'd like to try and it feels weird to say, but to become a Finn. And I'd like to learn Finnish and see where it gets me, if I can even learn it to a point where I would be a certified Finnish speaker, where I would get ykitesti results to a certain level, which would be middle, B1 at least. And so in autumn 2019, I decided that I'm going to seek classes. So I started looking for a teacher. I found a private teacher through my university classmates. A mother of one of my friends, she used to teach Finnish, and I think she still does. So kind of elementary Finnish, the first couple modules, and we started with her, and that lasted for about a year or so. And then after her, I went on to study with her teacher. So the teacher of my first teacher became my own teacher, and we started doing like deeper studies of Finnish. So we progressed from just the Suomen Messari book, which is like the basic one, into some of the other materials and conversational Finnish. I picked up some marathons. I think I did some intensive courses as well independently. So I just kind of wanted a more comprehensive study. But it's always been private education with Russian-speaking teachers. And that has been what I got used to, and that has been really helpful to me. That has been natural. And I think I did the right thing. It was the right choice for me. But it was obviously, if you compare it to education at university, it's a whole different thing. And it's really, I think it's up to each person how they choose to study. So I wouldn't really say that you need to go find yourself a Russian teacher, but it worked for me. So I studied at home, and we just called each other on, whatever we had, Zoom, WhatsApp, and with the books that I was provided, I just kind of did it all like that.
So it's a very, very random kind of. I've never heard of this one where like I wanted to make Finland my home. At least not in that sense, because usually I don't know what your life circumstance is actually, but usually if it's been a situation where somebody's moved here because their partner lives here, or one of my guests was like, she got married to somebody who's Finnish and then she moved here, so she's going to be living here. And then another one was Anita, she's had kids with a Finnish person, so she's gonna be here. So there's something that I see, like, okay, this is a reason to try and make Finland your home specifically. Why did you want to make this, our cold Finland, your home?
So I've decided to call it my home. I've decided to call Finland my home. First of all, we need to sidetrack a little bit.
Okay.
It's not that cold to me because I'm from St. Petersburg. So the climate of Jyväskylä is not that bad. It's not a far departure from where I grew up in.
Oh, it's far from me.
Well,
very far from me.
I understand. So rainy, snowy, slushy, grey, all of that I was very much used to, and that was not something new to me at all. But then again, culture-wise, yes, of course, Finnish culture was not something that I was experiencing daily as a child. I did go to Finland often on shopping trips with my family, which is a customary thing, used to be a customary thing a couple of years ago, for Russians to go to Finland to buy some things like fish and washing liquid. And we would just go here to, well, you just get in the car, you go to the nearest Lidl or whatever you have there by the border, and you stock up and you come back home and you cook up a good dinner with the fresh ingredients that you got from Finland.
Fascinating.
And then obviously there are still Finnish goods shops in St. Petersburg because that is what people like. It's Finnish quality is appreciated abroad. So yes, definitely. I mean, and I've traveled to Finland before as a member of a choir when I was 7, 8. Finland has left a very prominent mark on my imagination. I felt something special coming from Finnish people. I thought they were very kind, very open, curious, much softer than the Russians, but I don't really want to compare. And that was a motivating force for me to try and explore that further and try to understand if it's something that I would fit in. So the values of Finnish society gradually became apparent to me, and I gradually understood that this is something that I appreciate, this is something I want to be part of, and later on I want to become one, or as one.
So choir, so you
sing?
So
of course, being a singer from the youngest age and having sung in several choirs, I'd been here twice, once with my music school choir, once with my grammar school choir, and in both of these cases we traveled to like a festival. It's hard to remember now because it's been 20 years. But yes, essentially, so I've been to Finland a couple of times prior to coming here full time, and then we'd also somewhat often we would travel to shop at the Lapenranta shops. That would be which is a very common experience to someone who lives in St. Petersburg or anywhere in the territories that are surrounding the border. Yeah.
Fascinating. So, in your learning journey, walk me through your learning journey. What things worked and what didn't?
So in my learning journey, which was very complicated, one thing that hasn't worked all that well was practice. So at first, I think I want to talk about my first experience actually practicing Finnish, which was very traumatic, but I also learned a lot from it. So by practice, I mean going out there in the wild and speaking to Finns in Finnish and trying to sustain a conversation that would not be pre-transcribed or somehow pre-prepared. My first interaction that I had fully in Finnish was a visit to the library in early 2020. So in January or February 2020, which is just 3 months after I'd picked up Finnish again, I was sent by my Finnish teacher to practice at a library, at Jyväskylä Library. And my goal was to find some simple children's book to read simple Finnish and try to kind of comprehend what was written down. And I remember walking into a library to the information desk and trying to strike a conversation. And that did not go well because I was misunderstood. So instead, the person tried to show me where the book was. So we went up the stairs to the second floor and she kept asking me questions and I could not understand what she was saying. So I was struggling immensely at that point. I was already shaking by the time that I went to the library because obviously it is an anxiety-inducing thing when you're trying to speak a language for the first time, actually like speaking with like no help, no book on your hands. And so she kept talking and trying to understand what I wanted and if the books that she was showing me were good for me, but I could not comprehend what she was saying. So I just kind of started to go backwards a little bit and I was like, thank you. This has been useful. This has been good. I'll keep in mind what you tried to say. Thank you. And I just ran away. So I ran away. I ran out of the library. And I remember I wanted to start crying, but I was obviously in a public space, so I tried to hold my tears back. I went to catch a bus. I got on a bus. I went back home. And as I was going home from the bus station, I remember I called my mother, and that is where I started crying. Because it was immensely difficult for me to handle my feelings at that point. What I felt in reality was that there was only one thought in my head, and that was that I will never be able to speak Finnish. Never. Like, I cannot do this. This is not going to happen because this is so hard to understand and then to say something back. And there is so much that goes into a conversation like this. And this was probably the first time that I've ever experienced such a thing because I've spoken English since I was a child. My mother started teaching me English at the age of 2. And even before that, she spoke to me in English. So I've never had an experience, nor as a child, nor as an adult, trying to sustain a conversation in a foreign language. A truly foreign language that would be completely foreign. In that way, if you compare Finnish and English. So that was traumatic. And then I cried for a little bit with her on the phone. Then my flatmate came back home, and I think we made sense of it, of the interaction. But for a while, it left a scar on me.
Your flatmate was somebody who spoke Finnish?
I wouldn't say that, but he also studied Finnish. All of us went to the compulsory Finnish classes at university. So at some level we all spoke Finnish, but he wasn't a fluent Finnish speaker. So he was just another Russian, St. Petersburg friend of mine. And we made sense of it and tried to kind of stop the crying and try to calm me down. But that was a very memorable experience.
I can imagine it. Yeah. And usually when you start doing something and then there's this kind of a feeling that you experience with it, it makes it like something that's already difficult become even more difficult because your reflex feeling towards it is like, it kind of holds you back. Yeah. So it's quite remarkable that you somehow managed to turn the ship around and...
Yeah, I did, surprisingly. Or maybe not surprisingly so, but it was a lot of work to go from that experience into... I want to try again, and I'm going to try again. I don't remember what was my second or third. Maybe it was going to a cafeteria. Maybe it was joining my friend for a language group or something, talking to another language learner. But nothing quite as striking as my first visit to the library. That was something.
So the initial time of trying to practice was one of the things that did not work for you.
Yeah, it did not.
But
as well as just going and trying to just do it, just speak to people. At first, it was very hard for me. Every time I would come back home, I would have to write it out in a diary. I would have to talk to my teacher, and it would be like an event in my life where I would have to document it because it was that challenging for me to try and speak. Even though by that time I'd already be like A2, so it really wasn't that bad. But just the feeling that I got from not being able to comprehend, because I wasn't used to it.
Yeah.
With English, generally speaking, I would be understanding anyone at that point. And with Finnish, it was such a big difference. The gap was so big, And it was so foreign to me, this feeling that, well, I do experience it sometimes as well. So it's not like it has faded completely, but it was very striking back in 2020.
Yeah. I think I kind of understand what you mean, because when I'm in an environment where I cannot predict what's happening, I get very flustered as well. It's like, it feels like you've kind of just lost control of everything. And then it's like, yeah, so I really, really understand what you mean and the kind of feeling that it comes with. But obviously, to have gotten to this point, you at some point started practicing. So what did you do differently for practice to start feeling different in order for you to get comfortable speaking it with people?
I think that to get comfortable, I had to first get very uncomfortable and understand that I don't want that feeling. So I was motivated by discomfort of these initial interactions, and by discomfort of being left out or somehow feeling inadequate. That has motivated me to try again and again and try to get over these feelings, try to get over myself in this moment, and try to prioritize communication over being perfect. So this was a fight between perfectionism and making sense. At some point, I've agreed with myself that as long as you make sense and as long as you haven't offended the other person, technically you've done it. And because people don't actually care about you, they don't actually remember most of the things that you say, it's okay to make these mistakes. And then I moved to Helsinki and I started my first job, which is where I got to practice it in the real world, where I had an opportunity to use it with loads of different people in different kind of contexts, business-wise and, just regular day-to-day conversations. So it has really broadened that exposure factor, and it has really given me a platform to try and experiment with what I'm saying. I picked up some of the spoken language, which was, again, foreign to me back in Jyväskylä. So I kind of transitioned with my life circumstance. I also transitioned in my thinking, in my approach to these interactions.
In this first job, because I remember when I had the first job that I had to speak Finnish was as a cashier in the store. And I don't know how I got that job. I don't know how I passed that interview. I just went and nodded, and then just kept nodding. And then I signed the contract, and then I moved on. But what was the first one that kind of where you were able to? And also, was it so that you had to speak Finnish, or you forced yourself to speak Finnish?
In my first job, I didn't need to speak Finnish. It was an English-speaking place that I worked at, but there were some people who could not speak English that well, and with them, I've decided that I might start speaking Finnish, and gradually, as I was still learning it, I still had a teacher, and we still had the goal of passing Ylki-testi in a couple of years from 2020. I understood that I want to try and initiate that conversation. So when I saw Finns coming and speaking Finnish, I would speak Finnish to them, and we would have the whole interaction in Finnish. So it was partially my decision, partially contextual, and nobody was really telling me to speak Finnish at my first job. My second job, however, I did need to speak Finnish.
Okay.
And that was way more difficult for me because I already progressed to like a mid-management position. And that was challenging because of the pressure that the role put on me. I had loads more responsibility, basically, and trying to solve complex situations with customers as well. That was just, an added challenge on top of Finnish.
I can relate to that because the thing with the shop cashier thing is like, because it's just a flow of information. People will come there, and I've prepped scripts for commonly occurring scenarios. I've commonly used sentences that I have. And if you came and you asked me something that did not fall into one of those things, like, it's above me now. it was like, yep, good luck with that. And luckily I usually had other staff on hand because I was not like a full-time worker there. I was more of like a hired help. So there was always somebody who was more in that place, and I could just call them to take care of the situation. But those were nightmarish scenarios. Not gonna lie, yeah. But so regarding what worked and what didn't, so practice at the beginning didn't work, but then what other parts of the process did you feel like, okay, doing this and doing this really worked for me?
What really worked for me, language learning wise was consuming material in the same way that I'm used to when it comes to other languages. So in English, I was used to watching TV series, watching YouTube, listening to songs, being on social media. What else did I do? So that was pretty much my foundations, because my English came from mainly watching bloggers and YouTube. And I figured that we need to use the same technique in every other language. And I started trying to find Finnish bloggers, trying to follow Finnish bloggers on YouTube, trying to follow them on Instagram, going through intensive courses where we would watch Finnish TV series or just like internet series or something, comedy sketches. So I've adapted that part of my life to Finnish, and it has actually worked. I found it entertaining, I found it useful, I found it easy to consume. And gradually from these things, I transitioned into being braver at workplace and overcoming my fears of kind of not being perfect. And then just kind of being okay with the fact that sometimes I just don't understand. And that is still fine. At some point, I think I've decided that there is no way that I can know everything. Speaking of these scripts, when, you know, you have somebody coming in and it's not just a question of your seniority and your skills at work, but it's generally speaking in language question, you just don't have anyone to answer for you and you just don't understand. I've just decided that I'm going to let it go. It's just going to be there. If I call someone on the phone or if somebody calls me from a maintenance company, right, and I don't understand what they're talking about, I try to understand the context of it. I try to ask them to rephrase it or to speak slowly or something like that. But even if after that I don't understand, I just let it go. Because the thing is, I've never really been in a situation where that would be a matter of life or death. And most everyday situations have been manageable, even when I don't fully understand, yet I give an answer. So yes, there have been lots of situations where I would just say something because I think I assume correctly. And I just let it go. I just let it be. And to this day, there are situations where I just say, okay, I think this is what they mean, and I'm going to answer with what I think I should answer with. And that has worked.
That is crazy. I don't know if it's self-confidence or just...
I just think it's kind of foolish, to be honest, but you just let that be.
Right.
I just let that be because if you want to know everything, you need to go back to school and you need to really pick up the book and learn to the maximum. But if you don't want to do that, you don't really have any other option. You could practice, you could keep practicing. But the nature of Finnish conversation, the nature of Finnish people is that nobody is going to actually correct you. Even if you ask people to correct, at least in my life, it hasn't really happened that people would be correcting every single word that you say. So there is no such thing as kind of perfecting it on the job. That hasn't happened to me yet. Maybe English, that has happened to me, yes, but Finnish, I wouldn't say that is something that I've seen. So that part of it, that part of language learning, I just allow it to be what it is, which is sometimes you just got to pretend that you understood.
Yeah, whatever that is, I need more of that in my life because I have this thing where I need to understand stuff before I can move. And that part, needing to understand stuff also involves me sometimes explaining things too much to people because I'm like, no, you don't get it. I need to explain it to you. And then I find myself in an endless loop of either explaining things or not taking action because I want to understand something fully before I take action. And I'm trying to learn out of that. But this is very refreshing to hear that somebody has that on lock. And it's like, yeah, I don't need to understand the full thing.
Because the thing is, I believe that sometimes in life you don't understand some things, but then time passes by and you find yourself in a different context and you get the same information again. And from that level of whatever you have in life, you get it. So sometimes you just have to wait. Maybe right now this is not necessary for you to know. Maybe it's destiny, whatever you call it. But so my thinking is that sometimes it is really okay to miss out on something because then you might, in a couple of years, find yourself somewhere where you do get it. And maybe you shouldn't rush to know everything. Maybe when you really need to study, Helsinki history and you need to understand this really specific meme, because Finnish culture is a lot about jokes and memes like any culture. You don't get it now, but that's okay. In a couple of years, you're going to make the same meme yourself because you will get the context. So maybe forcing yourself to be there already, forcing yourself to be a native speaker when you're not a native speaker is not going to get you very far.
What resources did you use in your learning journey?
In my learning journey, I've mostly used my textbooks, so that is the Suomenmestari book, some printed materials from Harjoitustekemestari, so some pages of that.
That's textbook? Or?
Yeah, that is also a Finnish textbook.
Okay.
Like I said, video lectures, YouTube, Finnish TV series, comedy sketches, so short form, middle form content. Asking my friends if I'm trying to come up with a message to send to a recruiter later on when I was looking for a job, or I'm trying to write an essay or something important and it's not too big of a deal to ask, then I would reach out to my classmates. So the people I went to university with, my native Finns that I studied with, and then later on some other Finns that I got to be friends with, or my colleagues. I generally speaking would reach out to anyone who seems like they would be willing to help. And it doesn't always have to be the same person. I was just trying to see where this would go, like asking them, hey, would you be willing to check my CV? And they would be like, yeah, of course, no problem. So up until like very recently, and still, I do find myself doing this. I reach out to people in my network and I just ask them, hey, could you just check this message for me? Because this is really important and I don't want to mess it up. And this always works, like always.
Right.
I'm really fortunate that I'm surrounded by people who are supporting me in my language learning. And Finns are generally speaking nice people. They are super, super friendly when you tell them that you learn Finnish, and they appreciate that. And you should use that. Not in a malicious way, but you know, this is a good soil for you to plant your Finnish seeds into.
Wow, so poetic.
This is such a... Finland is a wonderful country for Finnish language learners because Finns love it when you speak Finnish.
Right. Yeah. So YouTube, vlogs, sketches, music, friends help, strangers help as well, I suppose. And what Finnish artists were you most listening to?
The first Finnish artist that I could actually comprehend, music artist, was Behem. So Behem is the woman who wrote Hei Rakas song, which was viral around COVID times, I think, somewhere around there. That was the first song that I ever understood the lyrics of. And I was blown away because that feeling has never again. That was the first time I felt this is like a good example of my language journey, going from crying at the library to this, which is probably like a year from the crying incident.
Oh, wow.
This was the first time I was listening to this song, I think on YouTube or on radio. And then I was like, I get what she's singing about. I get what she means. And I was blown away because I was like, wait, what is this? This is something new. I've never felt that. So that was brilliant, obviously. And then I went on to Google it and try to make sense of what she was using so I could understand it to its C. So that was the first song that I actually comprehended. And then after that, I started listening to Finnish rap, so Gettomassa. And he has become my favorite rapper for a while. I don't listen to Finnish rap that much anymore. I do still listen to hip hop a lot. And I think I've seen Gettomassa twice. And yeah, so there has been several Finnish artists that I would become a fan of, sorta, because I couldn't understand it to the full extent. But with Behem, definitely, she was the first, with her Hei Rakas song, she was the first that I actually understood that I get it.
Yeah,
I get it. And
in your heart.
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been overplayed, but she's a really talented artist. And I fully, I'm very appreciative of the fact that she wrote that song in the first place so that I could have that experience, that breakthrough, kind of.
Speaking of again resources, if you had to just off the top of your head, just rapid fire, just state one that you feel like is really useful and then one that you feel like is overrated or useless.
It's hard to pick. I think the most useful for me has been reaching out to my Finnish friends. Even though YouTube lectures are cool and short form content is great, reaching out to my classmates and them giving me the context as to why you would use a certain kind of word ending or kind of a word form. That has been, contextually speaking, that has been the most enriching. And then the least useful it's probably going to be something like Duolingo. I do not want to mention any names, right? I don't want to mention any, but yeah, so I was one of the first people who had started Finnish on Duolingo because it came out and I immediately hit it. And I was probably the first for a couple of days because I was really trying to prove that I know this language, to whatever extent that I knew it back then. But then it wasn't that useful. It was fun for me because obviously I understood it well enough and I could actually fulfill all the tasks that Duolingo asks you to do, whatever the word match things. But it's long-term speaking, I wouldn't say that these kinds of apps are that, yeah. Sorry about that, but...
No, I completely agree. I have a whole unreleased episode on this, on what I found absolutely useless. Duolingo is one of them. People have these 300-day streaks and then they can't say anything. You can't string together a meaningful sentence and stuff like that. At least on reflex, it's one of those things that I feel like is quite overrated. So, what observations have you made about other people learning?
The main observation that I made about other people learning Finnish, that would be my friends learning Finnish, is that people are much braver than me, generally speaking, and that is where they won. Loads of people started using Finnish much more fluently than I did because they were braver when it comes to practicing in real world. So where I got the problem of crying at the library, and then I could move on from that for a couple of months, they'd already started making these mistakes, but trying just more often, making Finnish friends at the bar, just being kind of more social. And that's what got the headway, because language is a tool of communication. That is why we have it. Language as is useless. It's part of culture, it's part of society, it's part of communication. And I think that the main reason why you should learn a language is because you want to communicate. Now that cannot be simulated by an app because real world, thankfully, yet is not an app, it's not AI, it's real human connection, real human conversations. And if you want to succeed in learning a language, one of your goals should be communication. And because they started more frequently trying to converse and trying to overcome the same fears, because I'm sure we all had the same feelings at some point, the faster they got to learn, the faster they got to accelerate in that. Because actual live communication makes you a fluent speaker. Even though you may not learn Finnish to C1, C2, which is my case, I stopped learning Finnish after I got that B1 certificate. Because I practice, I sound more fluent than my actual level on paper.
Yeah. So this is relevant because when we're having the conversation, when I was trying to recruit her to do the interview, you were like saying your Finnish level was so good. I was like, wait, hold on. Let's switch the entire conversation into Finnish. And then we had the conversation in Finnish. I'm like, what do you mean by your Finnish is not on sea level? But then again, I'm not an official tester of sea level, but just by my ear, I would say I'm pretty sure that is sea level. Sounds like sea level speaking to me. And it is what it is. And I think you said you got tested, and after you got the B1 test,
yeah,
a year ago.
So in terms of the actual language tests and my language band, for UK I got a B1. So it's all threes for 3 for every section, and that would be a B1. And then since then, that was in 2023. So I got my certificate in July 2023. I passed it in May 2023. Since then, I haven't had a single Finnish class.
Right. But then my theory on that one is that because you were speaking at a much better level, in my opinion, than just B1. So I think it's one of those things where when you reach like terminal velocity, it's like now you have the skill enough that just by virtue of you using it in your day-to-day life, it's self-propagating, it's self-improving without you actually making any extra effort for it. So I'm sure you can watch movies and watch podcasts, you listen to podcasts, and in your day-to-day, I'm sure you use it here and there and stuff like that. And just by virtue of that, it's improving by itself without you making any conscious effort. And this is the kind of cheat code with this. If you force yourself to learn to a certain point, you get to a stage where it's like a wheel on the top of a hill, and then it just starts rolling by itself. Yeah. Are there some surprising or unconventional things that you did that most people might not think of?
Let me think. So surprising or unconventional things that I did to help me learn Finnish. Well, okay, so I've never heard anyone do this, at least not my friends. Because I started listening to a lot of hip-hop, Getamasa per se, I started translating his songs. And that is spoken Finnish, like a hip-hop grade spoken Finnish. I've never heard anyone try to translate that without the context of being a native Finn. Or, well, most of his songs have not been translated. At least by the time that I was trying to find the translations, I'd not come across any, or maybe a couple, but that wasn't like his whole discography was translated. So what I started doing is I'd started trying to translate word by word and try to make sense out of all the spoken, the shortened, the jargonisms, whatever he had there in the text. And I wouldn't say that that was really fruitful, because you need to have the context for that kind of poetry, but it is something that I still sometimes do when I want to understand what the song is about.
And you feel like, well, you said you're not too sure how fruitful that was. So are you saying like you don't believe that it helped you in your learning much, or?
Translating hip-hop word by word did help my learning, but I wouldn't say that my translations were accurate or that I landed on the best way to do that. So in terms of discovery or having fun as an activity, as if it is a language learner activity, this was definitely great. But it wasn't the most efficient way to understand what is written. So I might have done it better if I were to just ask a friend of mine to translate it for me or try to give me context, which is later on I would go on Reddit or on some forums to find people's reviews of the track, or go on Genius and try to see what people are commenting on. And then
You can find Finnish lyrics on Genius?
yeah,
Wow, okay.
because if you want to, you can find anything pretty much, except for some translations, because this is like a very niche kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yes, it wasn't just Getamasa, it was Jebege, it was Kosti, it was Ibe. Ibe has a great song about Helsinki.
What is it called, if you remember?
It's called Stadion Kylmä.
Stadion Kylmä. I'll check this out.
I really like that song.
Yeah.
And having moved to Helsinki and discovering that song as I moved to Helsinki, that made sense of a lot of things for me. And still I do listen to that song, and it becomes richer to me. I wouldn't really call it a masterpiece per se, but the topics that he covers in the song, I think, are quite
So you're saying
real.
he's the Martin Luther King of our time?
No, absolutely.
No?
not.
Oh, okay.
I'm a classical singer. I don't want to be a snob, but I do compare songs sometimes. And there are far greater lyrics out there. But if we don't compare genres,
Yeah.
there are some artists that I personally vibe with. So we put these people in that category. So this is pop, this is hip hop. So I enjoy them to a certain extent, but I'm not trying to say that this is the best thing that I've ever heard anybody write or rap.
So it's just only slightly less good than like Mozart, just slightly.
Yeah, I wouldn't compare any rapper to a Mozart or to Beethoven or to Brahms or to any one of the classics, because these are two very different things.
Right. Okay, so translating rap lyrics, hip-hop lyrics was like a thing that you did that, okay. What are passive things that you did, things that you've already set up or happened to be in a certain way that helped you? So, for example, in my case, if I'm working in a place that, like, I'm required to speak Finnish, that is not my own doing. I'm not actively forcing myself to speak Finnish. It just happens to be that I'm here and I have to be here. I don't have to take any action for it to happen. Or if I set my phone into Finnish, that's a thing that it's been done once, and it's self forces me to kind of practice. Or the fact that I was dating somebody who spoke Finnish. Those are things that are out of my day-to-day control. that they just kind of help me. So, and they're like passive things that help me to improve. What are passive things in your life that helped you get better?
Some passive things that I've done to help me along the journey would be, first, of course, setting my phone to Finnish and then keeping it on Finnish throughout my travels. So if I'm on a holiday in Croatia, my phone stays in Finnish so that I don't lose that context. I don't lose that identity of a language learner. And I keep defaulting to that language as a basic kind of way to process things. Second would be speaking Finnish to myself. I tend to speak quite a lot in my, day-to-day to myself, which I don't know if that's healthy, but that is just my life. So instead of speaking English, which is my default language, I try to switch to Finnish. And that has also helped to reframe some of the thinking, because obviously language is also logic. And if you try to say the same thing in two different languages, you would be using different forms, different kind of expressions. And I found it useful to, if I just gone shopping, I come back from my shopping and I try to allocate the goods onto shelves and into the fridge. I speak about what I'm doing, just kind of talking to myself of something that I've seen at the shop. Somebody did something or said something, or something has definitely happened because there's been a social interaction. So I need to comment on it, especially if I made a mistake in saying something stupid, or maybe I didn't understand something. I would kind of give myself a little pep talk or like a little podcast rant about it whilst unloading the dishwasher or doing some domestic things, domestic chores. And that would kind of help me to reconcile with the reality of what has just happened. And that continues to happen because I do run into situations where I feel inadequate, where I would, feel uncomfortable. And these are not as bad as they used to be when I just would not make sense of anything that was said. These days, it's a little bit better. But still, this kind of technique of giving myself a little pep talk, ranting about what has just happened in Finnish, because the interaction was in Finnish, helps. I think it's a useful thing. So it's the same as, I used to watch vlogs in English. I started watching them in Finnish. I used to rant, and I still do in English. I'm switching to Finnish. So it's the same thing, the same function, the same kind of routine, the same task, but I'm just transposing that from English to Finnish. And I use the same kind of thought pattern, but I just reframe it a little bit.
So your self-talk, you switched your self-talk into Finnish. That's a massive cheat code, actually. I think that was one of the things that I did, but I completely forgot that I did until you brought it up now. But I saw it in a TED Talk, I think, where the guy, he was a polyglot, and he was talking about how he switched his personal self-talk to use a different language, at least as far as it was within his capacity to control. They switched to in the language that he was trying to learn, and that helped a lot. And the thing is, I think one thing I've noticed about these kind of things is, or learning anything really to this degree, is anything that forces your brain to do active work helps you along. So if you write, that's massive. If you speak, that's massive, because you have to process what you're saying and then say it. And then again, self-talk, and that I would imagine for people who think before they talk, most of the thinking happens, most of the speaking is actually self-talk in your head before. So the large volume of words and sentences in your life is probably in your own head. So if you can get yourself to have self-talk in your target language, that's that's a huge, that's a very good point that you brought up, actually, yeah. And what are the active things that you did? So things like where you have to actually get up and go make something happen, like study routine, I don't know, say speaking habit, etc., those kind of things.
One of the active things I did very recently, I went back to school. And that would be, I'm trying to get further education in music, in classical singing, plus theory, of course, piano, etc., the whole curriculum. And in my case, that would mean going into an actual musiikkiopisto, so an educational institution, which has Finnish teaching. So all of the people who study there are Finns or speak fluent Finnish. Teachers are obviously Finns, most of the native Finns. And it's a education institution that runs in Finnish. And I study at 2 different musiikkiopistot. So both of them run in Finnish, and at both of these institutions I speak Finnish, whether that is with the staff or my teachers or other students, the whole thing runs in Finnish. So I'm forced to speak Finnish regardless of whether I enjoy it, whether I feel like it, whether I think I'm good at it on a specific day or whatever. I just have to, because it's weird to try and break that when you have all of that set to Finnish, when the default of communication is Finnish. It's weird to try and break that into English. And you feel like you're downgrading yourself because you can speak Finnish, you can write in Finnish, you can handle it, you can actually do way more than you think. And which is why you're having these feelings, negative feelings, when you're trying to revert back into your old ways, the easy ways of doing it in English. Because that is true. It is true. When you speak more than one language, when you know it to a certain level, you can handle these things. Even if you think that you don't understand, most of the time you get the general scope of it. If you really struggle, then yeah, of course, copy, paste to whatever, Google Translator, whatever you need. But the point is that I can handle it. Even if I'm uncomfortable, there is always a growth potential there, and this is what makes it great. Because I understand that as long as I keep trying to grow, I'm doing progress. This is progress, because progress could never be speaking English. There is no process there is no progress in speaking Finnish when you're speaking English. It's just not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay there. It's going to stagnate. It's going to rot, and then you will have really stupid mistakes, which is where you lose your level of language of.
Every time I go abroad or something like that, where I don't have to speak Finnish for a while, and I come back, it's like, yeah, I could already feel the rot, the stagnation, and yeah. This is also one thing that I've come to, because I think most of us, the biggest goals we achieve are like academic. So you went to school, you graduated, most of the people, that's the thing. And I've come to realize that if you want to achieve goals outside of going to school, which is already kind of set up for us, usually, you have to have things set up in a way that it's easier to make effort towards the goal than to not make effort towards the goal. So what conscious changes did you make in your life that made it easier to practice than to not practice?
The conscious changes that I made in my life in order to practice easier, or in order to be more disciplined, is I would set up routines, as I do with anything else. If I don't have a routine, it's really hard to do anything. For instance, I do my washing on the same day, or I do my homework on certain days, as I do my classes. I've set up my classes to be every day of the week these days, because I want to get out there every day and force myself to speak Finnish, to be out there with the people and, be social in that sense, to practice. Same goes with homework. So if I understand that I have a free time for it, a slot for it, then I put it there and I try to stick to it. Of course, it's impossible to always stick to it, but having that schedule, having that routine, and having a concrete goal. So let's say I wanted to go study at a Finnish university fully in Finnish. I try to map out what I need to do to achieve that, what level is required, what vocabulary, what technical things, who can help with that, what books, what resources I need. And then from that, I try to map how many lessons I need to have, how much I need to practice. Same with music. So essentially, any kind of learning, I think, relies on these foundations, is that you need to set up a routine, which is just essentially a big task, a big goal, broken into smaller bits. So today I learn about this kind of chord progression, tomorrow I learn about this kind of thing. And then every day you get to add another bead onto this necklace that becomes your education or academic potential, success. And then sometimes you forget about the necklace, you drop it and the beads go scattered on the floor, but then you come pick it up again. So this is like a Sisyphus story when you, but this is really also about that, I think. Success is, when you fail and you come back up and you try again and again and again. And with language learning, the initiative comes from you.
Right.
Because nobody is going to sit with you. Nobody is going to hold you by the neck and say, hey, you have to become fluent.
I've realized also that integration is like a huge factor. And there's a story that I tell about a friend of mine who's actually right here, who when he lived in Australia, he was in charge of renting an apartment, and because he's Finnish. But then the German exchange students, when they would come, they would go, there was another place that had a German host. So they would choose there more often. And then you could tell the difference between those who chose the German host and his place. Because with him, they would have to speak English. But with the German host, they can just speak German. And then after the exchange was over, you could tell the difference in like language levels, the improvement. Because the people with him had to practice, and the people over there did not, because they could just speak German with that guy. Anyway, long story short, integration is important. How did you integrate yourself into like Finnish society?
The way I tried to integrate myself into the Finnish society would be through already existing networks. So classmates of my classmates, friends of my friends, my colleagues have played a large role in that. So I've become friends with loads of people through work, and we've stayed friends because of that. And on top of these, I would also go dating, of course, which I think you've mentioned before. So trying to date people in Finnish and going on events, different kind of conferences, festivals, volunteering. I've volunteered a little bit. I'm not going to say much, but a little bit here and there. And that has brought me a lot of connections, and being active on social media. Just kind of conversing with people. When you see somebody post something on Instagram and they're a native Finn, you can just answer in Finnish. You know, if you are having a conversation that is already there, you just kind of switch at some point, or you just start it in Finnish and you just continue in Finnish. So these are all like very natural ways for you to keep going. Same goes to anything else. If it's your landlord, or if it's the maintenance company, or if it's somebody like a cashier at Posti, you know, it happens every day. Just yesterday with me, they see my face, they speak English to me, which is fine, but they are a Finn, a native Finn, and I can see that, so I answer back in Finnish. And it's a completely natural way to reclaim that conversation in Finnish.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because a lot of people especially from countries where they have significant number of people in Finland, you very easily just do this where they just only spend time with people from their country. Or then also, others also do this where they only watch the TV from their country through some internet system thing, where they just watch TV from their country or radio from their country, and that's all. And then it's like, well, how do you expect to improve at Finnish if you're not doing anything that would take you towards it? Yeah.
Well, I think if I may just to kind of put my 5 cents into this, I think it's okay to continue watching TV in native language. But if you have a goal of learning, if you're curious, you need to find natural ways for you to transpose that or intertwine that with other routines, which would make it easier for you to integrate this language learning aspect into your day-to-day. So without forcing yourself into listening to a podcast, you need to try something that would hook you onto that, you know, whether that is TV watching or whatnot. So you can keep watching, you know, if you're originally from Russia, you can keep watching Russian TV if you like that, which, you know, everybody is different. But then if you're interested in Finnish music, listen to Finnish music. You don't have to watch Finnish TV if you don't want to watch Finnish TV, but then just try to do something which would be natural to you, right, but in Finnish.
Do you have any groups in your life that you could like force to speak Finnish with you?
I do have groups in my life where I'm forced to speak Finnish. That is mostly my classmates at one of my musiikopistot. So it's my music theatre class, which is where we have 4 students, including me. And well, these people generally speaking, don't even think about speaking English to me because it's not natural. Because there used to already be a group before I joined it with these people. And I just kind of came through and became one of them. So I don't have any leverage in trying to say, hey, why don't we just switch to English? Because that is not my goal. to start with, but also because there's been an entity that has been Finnish speaking, and it's an environment where nobody's expecting English or nobody is trying to learn it. So it's a completely authentic Finnish classroom where I just am
Right.
and try to keep up.
But I'm talking about like, because you're talking about now, right? So what I mean is like, because now you've already kind of achieved the goal, and you said it's been 9 years since you came. So let's say you started in year 3. So let's say in year 4 versus year 7. So in those times, were there people that you could force to speak Finnish with you in like 2020 and then in 2023, for example, in your during the learning journey part?
I've always found different kinds of people to ask to speak Finnish to me along the journey, whether that is my classmates or teachers or people at the shops or just really anyone like my neighbors. So I've relied on mostly these kinds of interactions along the way, and especially during times after COVID when people came back out in the world, I think that was something I was trying to establish. I would go to language groups, like I think it was, what's the name of that? So it was like a peer-to-peer teaching. You teach them...
Cafe Lingua?
Yeah, something like that. Like a language cafe. Yeah, that's right. So I would just join these kinds of groups and we would talk about some things, 3 of us or however many. And that is how I kind of sustained my social life. Because it was difficult for me to find any friends after university, of course, since everybody has moved out, or that is just life. And then, of course, after that, as I moved to Helsinki and I found a job, I found a permanent crowd to speak Finnish with. That would be customers, that would be friends, bosses, and with jobs and schools progressing, I would find new friends and just kind of grow that.
Okay, so language cafes, jobs, and just people you just meet, you are able to kind of maintain the language of the relationship is in Finnish during the initial years of you trying to learn. Okay. From your experience, when people don't succeed at learning Finnish, what has usually been the reason?
I think a typical reason of not being successful in Finnish is, first of all, reverting back to English. If you already speak English, doesn't have to be fluent, but still, if you find English to be your main language abroad, then you will most likely try to speak as much English as you could, which I'm guilty of that for the first couple of years. When I had no incentive of trying to stay on the Finnish track, I would speak English. Now I don't do that anymore, now that I've gotten more confident with my Finnish, despite all the mistakes and problems that I have. But I think lots of people just stay there in the comfort of English, and it's completely normal. But it is something that is going to hack away at your progress. It's going to make you eventually just lose that motivation. If you set yourself up as somebody who can't speak English right now, like, no, I'm not speaking English, then you keep on the Finnish track. But if you just lose that kind of incentive, then nobody can force you. Nobody can force you. This is a lonely thing to do. Even though language is a tool of communication, each learning journey is unique to the speaker. So if you yourself are not pushing yourself, if you're not being diligent with your education, nobody can force you to speak. Or maybe in some cases your spouse, your friends, it depends on your crowd. But essentially if you decided you want to learn it, it's up to you. It's your initiative, it's your responsibility.
Yeah.
So keeping on that track and try not to resort to whatever language you have as your main one is definitely a recipe of success. I think that is how it works.
I completely agree. That's what I did in 2022. So I was just like, New Year's resolution, and I just went and I told everyone. I didn't want to have that conversation one-on-one with everyone individually, so I just LinkedIn, Instagram, all my social media, just posted, if you speak Finnish, we're only speaking Finnish. You can just, as far as you're concerned, I don't speak any English. And so I just forced it with everybody. And if I'm going to tell you a story that's supposed to take 15, 30 seconds, it was going to take 2 minutes. And hey, too bad, you're just going to have to listen or move on. It's like, and like, it's one of the, like you said, it's your own initiative. You have to force it. And it was kind of like, I also had this kind of thought process that if you're my friend, me succeeding should be in your best interest. So it should be, in a way, your responsibility as well. And if you're not my friend, well, I don't care. So my success is my responsibility, and yeah, you either communicate with me or you don't. And yeah. So either way, you just have to kind of delude yourself into getting towards your goal and stuff. Yeah. But okay. So people reverting back to English has been, yeah, I think for English speakers it's a huge issue, because Finns will speak English with you. A lot of the systems here, you can find this stuff in English for. And is there anything else that comes to mind about why people may not succeed in learning Finnish?
I think another reason why somebody may struggle with learning Finnish is putting yourself down, honestly being too self-critical. But this isn't just a language learning thing. It's when you are acting from a position of absence of power in a situation where you're a foreigner in Finland and you think that your experience is less valuable comparing to the native Finn. And when you try to be something that you're not. Because these things, these insecurities, they ultimately eat away at your motivation. So if you're trying to be perfect, that will eat away at the freedom that you have when you're being imperfect. This is why I allow myself to sometimes just carry through the conversation even though I've not understood something or something big. Because I think that this is going to give me that space to just be, to just exist, to just talk, to just manifest myself in that interaction, instead of trying to think of the books or trying to be perfect, trying not to, God forbid, appear as rude or something like that, because that is, again, all of these things, they are important, but they are eating away at the actual life communication.
Yeah. From your perspective as well, so then as a counter side to this earlier question, what did you do that others don't?
What did I do that others didn't?
Yes.
Wow. With my experience, I've had a difficult time learning Finnish, and I can't really speak of everyone, but I think that what's unique to my experience is that I've gotten back up repeatedly, despite failing, despite losing motivation. I got back up. At first, when I just forgot Finnish, when I thought that this is not a priority in my life, I just put it on the back burner. I came back up to it in 2019. And through struggling, through my negative experiences with one of my first interactions, I was able to rework that and keep on doing it, showing up at the ykitesti, knowing that I can't have it all, knowing that I will have to make these mistakes and I might potentially get the very low marks. I allowed myself to get these 3s, but I got them to get the certificate because I knew that this is the sacrifice that I'm going to make and that the paper does not define me. Yes, I may get low marks, which is characteristical of me. I often do that. With English, 6.5 was low for me. It was supposed to be at 7, but you can't really say that anymore. The thing is, I just allowed myself to get back up again and again because I knew that there is a greater goal to this. If I'd set up on a journey of getting my Finnish citizenship, I knew that I will have to make sacrifices. And these awkward situations, these tears, these misunderstandings, these humiliating moments, they're just part of that journey. And if I wanted to be perfect, if I want to have no friction, if I want to have no problems, if I want to have no doubts, I just shouldn't do it. I should just stick with something that is seemingly less abrasive to my comfort. And learning Finnish has been a constant discomfort. Every day I'm in a situation where I don't know how the interaction is going to go. And it's always a question of, am I going to get what I want to get? And how am I going to get? How soon? But it's always rewarding when it's an unconventional way. So let's say I just wanted to get like a straightforward answer and then I ended up making a friend because it was an awkward chat instead. So that there is value in these things that arise from situations which you can't predict. So getting back up, being like, this has been traumatizing, but I'm going to do it again and I will succeed eventually. This is what got me through. And I think a certain degree of delusion. Because
Tell me about it. Yeah.
I enjoy that sense. I enjoy that feeling of being delusional. I use it in not just Finnish learning, but just English speaking, any kind of learning, music learning, career-wise. Just at some point, be a little bit delusional. Which some people may argue that delusion is not the right word to use. Just be kind of optimistic and try to be the best version of what you could. Try to make the most effort, etc. But I just call it kind of delusion.
I love that.
Just be delusional. Yeah. Because if you're not envisioning the best outcome, if I hadn't envisioned holding that Finnish passport in my hands somewhere in 2019, if I hadn't spent all these years when I was crying in my low moments thinking about that moment when I do become a Finnish citizen, I would have nothing to hope for. Because nothing is enough when you don't have that big goal. In my case, I've always been the kind of person who needs to have that grandiose goal. I need to have that big dream. And it has worked for me. It continues to work for me, actually.
I relate, yeah. Just being positively deluded.
Yeah.
That's how I put it to myself. Yeah, it's something that I very much relate with. It's, because I heard something like, you think highly of yourself. I'm like, well, who's going to do that for me if I don't?
Yeah, because nobody cares.
Yeah, but I love that. So the things that you feel like helped you a lot that others don't is the positive delusion, being able to pick yourself up and go again, and then the comfort with discomfort, kind of just forcing yourself into discomfort. Okay, yeah. Let's do like a rapid fire part on if there are like 6 parts to learning a language. Let's just go through them, and then you can tell me how you sorted out each part. So you can just list off the things you did to improve those things. So let's start with speaking. What are the things that you did to improve the speaking?
To improve speaking, I just allowed myself to be wrong, be rude, be weird, be loud, whatever it is, and just keep speaking, no matter what.
And I'm guessing you spoke to people.
Yeah, and I continue doing so, as I said.
Despite the initial...
Yeah.
What are the things that you did that helped you with listening comprehension?
The listening comprehension, I'd say that mostly, so video content and listening to songs and just existing in a media field where Finnish is spoken as the main language. So it's consuming media and understanding that people may have different accents, different pronunciations, and gaining that skill of understanding no matter what. Trying to make it up to par with English, because with English I understand almost any kind of accent. So trying to use the same neurons in my brain to match these things.
Speaking of this listening, I just wrote an article I'm working on a website for this project, and I just wrote an article about listening, and I wrote that you should listen to like podcasts, for example, regardless of or not of whether you fully understand what they're saying. Well, how do you feel about that thing? Because you might not have reached a level where you understand the full thing, but like a lot of people, because they haven't reached that level, they don't listen to like these kind of things. What do you think about that?
I think you should, no matter how much you don't understand. If it's entertaining to you, if you find it educational, then you shouldn't rob yourself of that experience. I think that no matter which language you're learning, there is always shows, there is always content, there is always ways to interact with language, trying to comprehend. And you can just pick whatever feels right for you. And then if you don't understand some kind of meme or some contextual thing, just be okay with it. Because as I said earlier, right, today you don't understand it. In a couple of years, you're going to be making these memes yourself. And it's just a question of time.
Perfect. How did you work on grammar?
Grammar is a tough subject.
It is very.
Honestly, grammar, just being consistent when I was still studying with it. So try to be as accurate as possible with what I'm saying. Trying to think before I say, if it's in educational context. But in everyday life, if you see that you're really struggling on the day, if you can't remember how to say something, or you're really out of place and you feel like stressed, replace difficult things with easier forms. you can shorten things. You can say them in puhekieli. You can use an English term because, especially Uusimaa region, people use puhekieli and they use industry-specified jargon all the time. In my industry, in music industry, people always use half English words as a say because it's like an English verb that has a Finnish verb ending. I wouldn't really say that is jargon. It's just people make up these things from the context of language that they speak.
But in terms of like, did you use like you mentioned textbooks as a way of? I'm sure that also was something that you used to work on improving the grammar and stuff. Were there any like websites as well that you would refer to? You would go check for how things are said or how conjugations and stuff like that.
For grammar conjugation, I wouldn't really say that I had a website or a specific source. I would consult my teacher and I would consult my Finnish friends.
Okay.
Because conjugation is also a contextual thing in Finnish. Yeah. Sometimes you may omit certain kind of rules when it comes to conjugations when you want to say something, when you speak fast or just when it's not that important because, surprise, surprise, conjugation isn't always the main thing.
Right. And so about listening comprehension, how did you practice? What are the things that you did that got your listening comprehension to improve?
In order to improve the listening comprehension aspect, I think I resorted to first watching different kinds of media. So that is both the news, bloggers, short form content like TikToks have helped me a lot in trying to broaden my range, better my comprehension. Speaking to friends and speaking to older people because everyone has a different accent and just kind of trying to make sense of it. If I heard something new, I just would write it down and then I would then go to someone else to try and figure it out. So without letting things just be on the loose like that. Even though sometimes, like I said, I just allow myself not to understand.
Right. I recently wrote a blog post thing and in there I tell people like, they shouldn't wait till they understand everything before they start listening to stuff. Personally, I would just started listening to things that interest me in Finnish, and even before I fully understood it. What do you think about this?
Yeah, definitely. You shouldn't rob yourself of that experience. It's normal not to understand everything in any kind of language. Because the thing is, if you watch like a nature documentary or something specific in your native language, and you don't understand something, you're not going to switch it off. You're just going to wait until you get more information. And I'd say you should do the same in any language. Sometimes I watch the news and I don't understand what's being said, but I just keep watching and then somebody else talks about it at work and we can process that information together. So try and find ways to incorporate these things, to try to find ways to figure out what happened.
Fair point. And then about grammar, how did you go about grammar?
Yeah, I think about grammar, I'm not the best person when it comes to grammar. I don't have the cleanest Finnish. So partially I just let it be what it is. And partially if I need to sound proper, I try and consult my books, the things that I used to write down, my notes. Try to speak to teachers and try to speak to my Finnish friends. Just let them review whatever it is that I have to say, if it's like a speech or an essay or a CV. In day-to-day life, I just replace things that I forget how to say properly. And I use a lot of puhekieli. I don't really speak. I have never really spoken kirjakieli at all, like really since the beginning. And I think that puhekieli allows you to just slack off, which is also okay because it's a natural part of the language. So why do you? It's okay.
Yeah. And then what about reading comprehension?
Reading comprehension wise, it's again same as listening comprehension. Different kinds of media. So if it's news, you can try to open up a source like a magazine that has news dubbed in English. We can try to read the same article in Finnish and in English. There is books which are written both in Finnish and in English. I have one of them at home. So you can just kind of cover one part of the text, read it, try to understand, open it, and then the words that you don't know, you just kind of copy to your vocabulary. So just go like bit by bit.
So it's
kind of.
both in English and Finnish.
Yeah. There is resources for that. There is books which are written in both English and Finnish.
Interesting. The only one I know of is I got gifted a Bible that was English and Finnish same time.
And if a Bible works for you, should definitely. There's loads of different words in a Bible, which would be useful for every day.
I just didn't know that they have more of these kind of books like that.
Yeah, there's definitely articles. I'm sure you can Google it and try to find something that interests you. But definitely some newspapers and some magazines for foreigners. There's definitely a Russian magazine that talks about Finnish culture in both Russian and Finnish, and it's a resource where you can learn that Finnish vocabulary in the safety of having that Russian equivalent one next to each other. So these things are great, and I would recommend using them.
And how did you, but again on the reading comprehension, at the early stages when you didn't understand much, what were you reading to kind of improve your reading?
At first, when I really had like a small vocabulary, when I would not read much text, it was just everyday things. One of the first things that I understood is the cooking instructions of one of my like microwave meals or something like frozen. I think I bought some a frozen meal, and at some point I understood what was written. And that was one of the first breakthroughs, just like Behm's song, right?
Yeah.
It's when you first understand what the song is about, it's the same as anything else. You read a small piece of text and you understand, okay, we're talking about simmering, not about boiling. This is already a breakthrough. So maybe, it would be beneficial to try and include this kind of small, easy text at first so that you don't have to climb a mountain.
Lovely. And what about with writing?
With writing, you just have to keep writing. You have to find what is interesting to you. If you are a music learner, if you practice some sport, if you want to become a writer, you should just write what feels best to you. So if there is a topic, which of course you have to cover a certain range of topics as a student, a compulsory kind of topic base, but then you need to depart from that onto something that is actually interesting to you. So if you do kickboxing, which both me and you did that, you need to write about that. If you do research on greenhouse gas, you should write about that. And then no matter how difficult the topic is, if you are actually really into the material, you will find a way to incorporate these long words into your simple text. So just kind of doing bit by bit and doing what you actually like is going to get you there gradually.
Right. And then what would you again say about early stage writing? Any brief, quick words on early stage writing at the time when you have a smaller vocabulary?
So I think for early stage writing, you shouldn't really try and catch it all. It's quite impossible. You should kind of just use what you have. And then if you really feel like I need this to sound pretty, go and Google one word. You can go to Sanakirja, you can go to any kind of sanasto. Just find that one word that would really make it pop for you and just use that. If your teacher allows you, which is what I did. I would just write my own texts. And then if I needed to use some kind of pretty word, I would just go and Google it individually and try to incorporate it with what I have.
Okay. And then number 6 of the 6 is vocabulary. What things did you do to increase or expand your vocabulary?
For the vocabulary part, I think mostly was, again, watching people speak, seeing what they replace familiar things with. So if you hear somebody say, well, it's the same as in English. If you hear somebody use a word that is an alternative to your typical one, use that instead. So try to incorporate that in your speech. Just don't go for this simplest option. Don't go for the most apparent word. Use something else. And then try to build up that confidence in just sounding a bit more fluent. Because fluency is a lot about what you can replace words with. And this is how you can actually spot a native speaker, is when they really struggle to find a word, like I sometimes do too. So that's one of the makeups of fluency, is when you can easily just swap words without hesitation.
Right. Lovely. So tell me of the times when you found it most difficult to continue chasing that goal. I think at the beginning you already told about that incident in the library. And do you have any other incidents where you found it very difficult to continue chasing the goal?
I certainly did have situations where I was doubting if I should continue with my Finnish, especially when I had questions in the work environment which I just couldn't solve, which would be when I thought that I understood something but I didn't, and that would really make me feel bad, because I would always try to strive for the positive and be that delusional Finnish speaker, but sometimes it just doesn't work and you really don't understand, you really miss out on something, and that would really put me down. And there are moments like this, like ever so often, there are things that really get you, and you just get upset and you get frustrated, but it's just part of the process. You can't be fluent without making these mistakes. And the thing is, language is a living thing.
Yeah.
It's not stagnant like that. If you knew something today, you may forget it tomorrow. You may be stressed, you may be whatever. And thinking that it's always going to be the same, there are bad and good days. And especially if you have more than one language to juggle, which I do 3. Don't be so harsh on yourself. There is no need. It's impressive to know several languages, and you should be positive about your learning journey. Always. And also maybe not trying to compare all the languages that you speak. That would be useful.
Right. And what words of encouragement can you give to anyone who has gotten fed up, stuck, whatever, in this process of trying to learn Finnish?
Well, I think that if you're stuck, first thing is you need to put it down. If you're really trying to break through a plateau, you sit at your desk for 3 hours, nothing happens. You can't write that essay or something, like you've just come through an interaction that left you empty, traumatized you.
Just quit, guys.
No, just put it down for a minute, because sometimes, and this has happened to me, after a summer break, I would come back to the classroom and my Finnish would improve. Because I haven't spoken for a couple of months, I had that break for the material to settle and for my brain to do some other things, some new things, potentially some hobbies or whatever I got to do during the summer. And I would refresh that space where I store that language. So it would come back and the soil would be restored. So sometimes you just get stuck because you've been doing so much and you get tired, and that's fine. That is okay. So putting it down for a minute is absolutely fine. But then when you feel like you've recharged, you have to pick it up, and without the pressure, without trying to restore all that empty space, all the space that you lost, the time that you lost, you just have to start doing it as if you're starting from the beginning. So without putting yourself down and without accumulating that extra weight.
This phenomenon of just stopping something and then when you come back, you have magically just improved, I feel like it should have a name. If nobody has discovered this, it should have a name.
It does.
And if no one has put this into text, I'm claiming it. Because I realized that with my football, and I stopped playing football for like quite a while. Then I went back to playing, and I started like on an intellect. Physically, obviously, I was out of shape. I wasn't as good as, but intellectually, I could spot things that I wasn't spotting before. And it was like, but I haven't played for so long. Why is the brain able to operate better now after such a long break than it was when I was actually trying to? So it's a very interesting concept that I need to personally look into later at some point. But how has your life become better now that you live in a country where you speak the language?
My life has definitely improved since I learned Finnish and since I received my Finnish citizenship in many ways. First, confidence-wise, despite having all these frustrating interactions, having them in Finnish is way better than just being a weird foreigner who doesn't understand, seemingly, what's going on. Because you will always be left out. No matter which country you live in, you will be to a certain extent left out, and it is normal if you don't speak local language. So having that kind of confidence is already great. And then, of course, networks. So being able to sustain relationships with people on a deeper level is priceless, because these people, the people that you surround yourself with, they become your firsts in everything. They become your confidants. They become people who can check your CVs. They become people who can answer your domestic questions, all that. And they just become your first friends. They become people that you share your thoughts with. And this is all really valuable because being a foreigner in a country like Finland can be isolating. The culture itself is not extremely social, which there is nothing bad about that. But naturally, it is not somewhere this is not an environment where you would have thousands of friends. So understanding the value of local language and trying to use that to your advantage is a great move. And I wish I would have started sooner. I wish I would have started all the way back, but that wasn't my priority. So now we have what we have.
Understandable. Yeah, so as a follow-up to that, tell me of the times when you found it most difficult to continue chasing the goal. What was that like? What was going through your head in that moment? In those moments?
When I had the darkest, the most difficult times, when I struggled the most at work or just generally speaking at life, when I would have loads of frustrating interactions, that would just leave me empty and isolated. And it was a very specific kind of feeling of always being inadequate and being frustrated, given that I feel like I'm intelligent, I'm capable, I know several languages, but yet I feel like I'm not enough. And that constant need of kind of prove that was really hard. But then again, these moments, they come and go. They really do. You can't live your whole life feeling like that. You will have moments eventually in your journey where you would feel that triumph, these breakthroughs, like understanding a song for the first time, reading a piece of paper for the first time, speaking with a friend, making your first joke in Finnish. These breakthroughs, these are the things that you should really latch on to. These are the things that you really should keep close to your heart, because these things will motivate you. And trying to depart from all these dark thoughts and always feeling inadequate, trying to reframe your thinking, trying to recenter these good moments will eventually get you through. And this is exactly what I try to do. Is no matter how many times I'm going to have this awkward interaction somewhere at Vero or whatever institution, right? I think of the good times. I think of when I made a joke and everybody laughed. I think about a presentation. I think about whatever other things, making this podcast. You don't have to be C2 level to talk about these things. These are the good ones, and these are the ones that I think a speaker should cherish, no matter the level.
Lovely. So thank you so much for doing this. And I think your story is very unique and it will provide so much value to the listeners. And again, I always try to find people from different life circumstances and stuff like that.